For any teacher, the phrase field trip can bring up this mix of total excitement and, well, a little bit of anxiety, right? You've got the budget, the logistics, the endless permission slips. But what if we just shifted our focus? What if we looked past the planning headaches and really zeroed in on the incredible learning potential? Okay, let's dive into exactly that and turn this logistical puzzle into a seriously powerful educational experience.
Just think back for a second to when you were a kid. What's the one school field trip that you still remember? Was it seeing the giant dinosaur bones in a museum? Or maybe feeling the rough bark of a tree in a nature preserve? Whatever it was, it stuck with you. And there's a reason for that.
And that's really the secret sauce, isn't it? The best, most memorable field trips aren't just a day out of the classroom. They're when learning becomes dynamic, when it's real. It's about taking ideas off of a worksheet and putting them right into the world your students can see and touch. It is quite literally learning that moves.
So, where do we even begin? Well, the journey from just a cool idea to a full-blown itinerary all starts with a solid blueprint. This is the foundation, and getting this part right is what makes a good trip an absolutely great one.
Every, and I mean every, great field trip starts with a really clear why. Before you even think about where you're going, you have to nail down your educational objectives. What specific lesson are you trying to bring to life? What do you want your students to actually do or understand by the end of the day?
And look, a tiny change in how you phrase it makes a huge difference. Go to the Science Museum? Well, that's just a place. It's not a goal. But aiming to observe exhibits on forces? Now that gives the trip a purpose. It gives you and your students a real mission.
Once that objective is locked in, then you can start looking at locations. And it's not just about finding a place that kind of fits the theme. You gotta look deeper. Does the museum or the park offer guided tours that you can tailor to your lesson? Are there any hands-on workshops? That's the stuff that takes a trip from just seeing things to actually doing things.
Okay, so our blueprint is solid. Now it's time to actually build this thing out. This is the logistics phase. But hey, don't get overwhelmed. Just think of it as a checklist of steps that brings your whole vision to life.
First things first, the budget. It almost always boils down to these four main things. Transportation, that's usually the biggest piece of the pie. Then you've got your entry fees, meals, and any special programs or materials you might need. When you see it broken down like this, it feels a lot less intimidating, right?
And just remember, you're not in this alone. There are tons of ways to get funding. You can do school fundraisers, look for educational grants. You'd be surprised how many local businesses and community groups are actually excited to support student learning. So seriously, don't be shy about asking.
All right, once you've got your destination and your budget figured out, it's go time. You just follow the checklist. You book the bus, you lock in the date with the venue, you get those permission slips ready to go, and then you put out the call for parent volunteers. Following this order just keeps everything running smoothly.
But in the middle of all this planning, the buses, the budgets, all of it, there's one thing that stands above everything else. It is, without a doubt, the #1 priority. And that, of course, is safety. This part is completely non-negotiable. It all starts with knowing your own school's safety rules inside and out. Then you have to check the specific guidelines for the place you're visiting. And finally, you absolutely must have a plan B, and maybe a plan C for when things don't go exactly as planned.
So what does that contingency planning actually look like? Well, it's not about being paranoid, it's just about being prepared. What happens if there's a sudden thunderstorm? Do you have a backup indoor activity? Is the first aid kit and a list of emergency contacts super easy to grab? Thinking through this stuff beforehand is just critical.
So the logistics are locked down. Phew! Now we get to the really fun part. Let's talk about how to craft an experience that's so much more than just a bus ride. This is where we make sure the learning really lands.
You see, a really effective field trip isn't just a one-day thing. It's more like a 3-part journey. You bookend the trip itself with some prep work beforehand and a solid debrief afterward. This simple structure is what turns a fun day out into a really powerful learning module. The pre-trip part is all about setting the stage. You can talk about what they're going to see, maybe give them a little scavenger hunt or a few questions to answer while they're there. You're basically getting their brains warmed up and curious, so they arrive ready to dive in. And then, afterward, comes the post-trip debrief. Honestly, this is where it all clicks into place. It's a chance for students to share what they saw, to connect it directly to things you've been talking about in class. It's the step that really makes the learning stick.
And hey, don't just let the experience fade into memory. You want to document it and turn it into something tangible. Instead of just a simple slideshow,
What if you challenged your students to create their own 1-minute documentary with photos from the trip and their own voiceover explaining something they learned? It turns a memory into proof of learning.
Okay, we have covered a ton of ground here, from the big picture goals all the way down to the nitty-gritty logistics. So as we start to wrap this up, what is the single most important idea to take away from all this?
It's this. The secret ingredient is simply meticulous planning. It's all that thoughtful, intentional work you do before the trip even happens that takes a simple day out and transforms it into a truly unforgettable, game-changing learning experience for your students.
Oh, and one last piece of advice, be the go-to person. Whether you're the lead teacher or the main coordinator, just being available to answer questions and help solve problems as they pop up makes the entire process so much smoother for everyone involved.
And finally, you've got to celebrate it. Share those student documentaries, the photos, the stories. When you do that, you're not just showing off a fun trip, you're proving the power of real-world, hands-on learning to your entire school community. So that really just leaves us with one question. Now that you have this blueprint, what classroom lesson are you going to bring to life for your students next?